And welcome to London's West End on a fantastic but very cold day. My name is Stuart Leesall. I run Chiselbury Publishing, an exciting new publisher that's bringing out a wide range of books from fiction to history. I'm here today at the RAF Bomber Command Memorial by Hyde Park to discuss a new book that we're bringing out later this year, which is going to change and correct the misconceptions that many people have had about the role of Bomber Command in Second World War. So I'd like to welcome Marcus Gibson, the author and former Financial Times columnist, who is here today to discuss the book that he's been working on for 12 years. So Marcus, good morning, and tell us a little bit about Grand Slam, how the RAF Bomber Command won World War II.
Thank you, Stuart, and good morning. Yes, today it's -4 degrees on January 2024. RAF Bomber Command used to suffer -40 on missions quite regularly, and one aircraft even recorded -100 on one of their raids. So that's the sort of conditions these brave men fought and died in. The book intends to correct the popular misconceptions about RAF Bomber Command. First of all, that it was very costly, it was very ineffective, and that it was often, with Dresden, etc., falling into a war crime. This is entirely untrue, and the purpose of the book is to correct that once and for all.
So that's a fascinating thing. As you said, Dresden's 80th anniversary of the raid comes up in February next year, and I'm sure many of these things will be repeated again, just like we've had about the atomic bomb in Japan, as to it is unnecessary and not looking at the reality. So tell me though a bit more about, because many people, as you say, feel that it was rather like the First World War, lions led by donkeys, sacrifice, 55,000 airmen or bomber crew died for nothing. Tell me whether that was true or not.
Yes, the RAF was the most decisive factor in shortening and in winning the war, I believe. In 1943, it forced the Germans into the three biggest, most catastrophic errors of the war. First of all, it made sure that that Hitler triggered the V weapons program, which was hugely costly.
Because V, I think, stands for vengeance in German, isn't it?
It does indeed. And that was as a result of the earlier raids, which were in fact not that destructive. But in 1943, going into early 1943, the raids of Hamburg and the Ruhr campaigns were so destructive that the Germans were forced to bring back most of their vital 88mm anti-tank guns and all their fighters from Russia in order to protect their cities.
Yes, because the 88mm was one of those unique, or not unique, but a very special weapon that was both equally effective as an anti-tank weapon as it was as an anti-aircraft gun. And so therefore, had they had them on the Eastern Front, the whole thing could have been very different to battles such as Kursk.
Yes, indeed. The extraordinary thing is that the 88mm gun was lethal, extremely accurate, and it was sort of 28 rounds a minute was its rate of fire, and it could fire up at 30,000 feet. The most extraordinary thing was, of course, it took only a handful of rounds to knock out a T-34 tank on the Russian front, but it took up to 1,500 rounds to bring down a single Allied bomber over Germany. So the consequential wastage of ammunition cost the Germans dearly.
Yes, and what else? So we've dealt with the Soviet front. Essentially, the Bomber Command probably shortened that war by a year, 2 years, maybe even completely changed the battle. So what else were the other effects?
2 or 3 major effects. First of all, the actual physical destruction of Germany's railways, factories, munition plants, etc., forced them to go underground. There was an enormous dispersal and underground construction program. As we know, the Atlantic Wall alone had 6,000 huge bunkers which they built. That was probably the equivalent to 1,000 U-boats if the steel was used for other purposes.
Well, we're standing here, you think, with the Elizabeth line just opened. You think the resources that to build one line under London took 20 odd years. So you think of what the Germans did, just the amount of resource that was tied up that could have been otherwise, and from their point of view, better employed.
Yes, well, the three large flak towers in Berlin, which Hitler ordered, the amount of steel that went into those would probably have created probably 50 U-boats from that point. Of course, the other side of it was that while many historians do rightly say Germany's production did go up in 1944 in particular, much of that production was unimportant, it was low quality, and much of it was never used.
And how much more would it have gone up if it hadn't been destroyed and if they'd been able to work in their normal factories?
Quite so. Yes, the dislocation of German industry had an enormous effect, and of course it meant that all those distributed component factories were entirely dependent on the railways in 1944, late 44, to bring them to the assembly plants. And of course that's where the Allies hit their railway system hard and completely brought the whole system to a halt.
And what about the claim about war crimes? Because, you know, hundreds of thousands, whatever, supposedly were killed in Hamburg and Dresden, you know, one of the most beautiful cities in eastern Germany. What do you say about that?
I think a whole new view of this needs to be taken, a very serious one too. First of all, the actual death toll wasn't the 250,000 which Goebbels claimed. There's probably nearly 15 to 25,000. We'll never really know. Germans. Dresden by that time had hardly been touched, and it was the centre of the Germans' optic industry. So all those gun sights, range finders, U-boat periscope optics, it was all coming out of Dresden. And besides, the Russians asked us to bomb it because it was now quite close to the Russian front.
And it was a major, I think, railway junction, wasn't it?
Yes.
The front.
It was the last remaining main railway route to the Eastern Front. So it was a perfectly legitimate industrial military target.
So coming back more to the timing of the book, how's it going? When are we going to see it?
I'm under your heavy baton, Stuart. I will do my best to get it by Easter.
By Easter, so really second half, by the time we've got it already, second half of 2024, you're going to be able to read Grand Slam, how the RAF Bomber Command won World War II. And I think it's going to be a fascinating read, Marcus.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for joining me here today on this glorious day. And I look forward to seeing the manuscript and the book itself.
I look forward to that, Stuart. Thank you.
And following my chat with Marcus at the RAF Bomber Command Memorial at Hyde Park, we ran into Diana Calderwood, whose father was actually an RAF pilot on a Lancaster with 106 Squadron, who'd come all the way from southern Rhodesia to join the war effort. So we thought we'd add a few words with Marcus having a chat with Diana.
Thank you, and my sister.
And your sister.
Yeah.
Good morning, Diana. Good morning. Tell me about your father's career in the RAF Bomber Command, please.
So he volunteered in southern Rhodesia in about the middle of 1941 and did his training all in southern Rhodesia. And then he arrived here in the August. I think he sailed actually in the April of 1942 and was based at RAF Hickson in the August of 1942 and did his conversion onto heavy, well, he was flying Wellingtons there. And then at the end of that year, he did his conversion to Lancasters at Winthorpe, RAF Winthorpe. And then, actually it was 44, it was, is it Waddington? And then Winthorpe, anyway.
Yes.
And then in the January, just before his 20th birthday, which is the 18th of January, which is today, but a long time ago, 1943, he was then sent to 106 Squadron and did his first operation over enemy territory in, I think it was the 27th or 28th of January. So, yeah.
So 106 Squadron suffered very heavy losses, didn't it, throughout World War II?
Absolutely. They had a heavy casualty. And I know all the way through Dad's life, he didn't talk about it after the war, but he always felt that he had been very lucky to survive, because he served a tour, finishing on the 11th of June 1943, and he then went on to instructing, but sadly his navigator had to do an extra couple of tours, operations, and he was lost. So Dad knew just how critical and valuable life was. Yeah.
Well, it's lovely to see you wearing your RAF Lancaster badge here today.
Yes, it was
So
a gift from my sister.
on your father's birthday. Can I thank you on behalf of us all who live in such freedom and wealth and joy today, to thank your father for his service during World War II.
Well, thank you very much. They were all very brave young men. So thank you
Indeed they
for,
were.
and I look forward to seeing you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.